All right, so let's settle into this variation for a simple breathing pattern and opening and kind of lengthening out through the ribs, motioning open, kind of the gates of the ribs into this pattern with the legs elevated. So let's come back and recline. Join me for reclining. And as you start to lower back your bones, feel the shape of the back of the pelvis slightly lifted. Yeah, before you get all your props, perfection around you, what needs to happen is that they're accessible. So you can get a hold of your blocks with ease. You can get the belt overhead, your sandbag on you. And the first pose, I want to give you two options for this opener for the front body. So option one is this is a simple without a block under the pelvis. Okay, option two is that you're going to place your feet on the bolster and push down with your feet to lift up your hips. And then as you slide your block flat and wide under the pelvis, then you lengthen your legs forwards and let the feet float, let the heels float. The legs have a sensation of a little bit more opening at the front of the hip line. So you can have the block or not. If it offers some positive elongation, take it. If not, go with the block-free option. Okay, let's add sand on either the front of the hips. This is a nice part of this one. You could place the sand low, and or you can place sand across the ribs. Wherever it seems right at this moment. If you're going with the block, you might like to have the sand so it really feels like it's across the upper legs. There's some potential for that to loosen up. Okay, now as you reach back to get your belt, hold open the chest via the position of the shoulders moving back to the ground. Now, giving yourself permission to do many tactics of maneuvering, which might include moving the pelvis, moving the tailbone, letting the legs have the freedom to just be without having to push down into the calves or correct the feet. Feel however they have ended up as you continue to surrender into the support of the props. So begin to follow the focus upon the inhale. And as you exhale, feel where your hands connect to the belt and take them as wide as you can consciously. Still feel the hands holding the belt, but the arms have a little less resistance. So they are touching the floor. Not all particles of your arms are touching. If you consider your hand a part of that, it's likely some parts of that are lifting to grab the belt and the upper shoulders as well. So all breathing is acceptable right now, as long as we are consciously receiving the breath, feeling that your spine is receiving, your ribs are those gates that are opening and closing. And if it's possible, let the eyes gradually go to closing, like you close the shutters, and turn the focus inwards. And experiencing filling the body from the inside out. And exhale, letting go. Just arriving in your practice. Now moving the arms over the chest, holding the belt. Alternate the arms moving overhead, back, and then over the chest. Think of that center of the heart as that space the belt is aligned over. And then as they move, the arms move back overhead, feel the armpits widen. Okay, so explore this for a few more rounds, and the casualness of this is important. Almost like restorative needs a little bit of casual exploration, just feeling how, if you give yourself permission to receive the support from the props and the guidance of the sequence, there's a part of you that adds to how you feel about it, how your body organizes around the shapes, and then your holding patterns start to let go. So last time the arms go overhead. Let go of the belt, shifting quite a bit now. We're going to slide the sand off of the thighs. And then I want you to place your knees pointing up, feet down, pushing. And then as you press into your, I guess the heels is a nice place to be assertive. So I want to feel my heels push down firm, lift up from the outer corners of the buttocks, lifting, feel a little bit of that squeeze. Hips are up in that bridge pose. And then we'll slide the block if it's under there away. And then as you lower down and feel the arch, we're going to move into reclining cobbler's pose. So I slide the blocks under my legs. And that's an important instruction. Where it works for you is quite individual, whether it's actually thighs or you pivot the blocks so they are around the contour of the skin of the legs. It's a little more comfortable, but feel where the kind of the pot of the belly can actually relax and soften, not harden, but let it go. And then feeling that basin of the pelvis arching. And let's take the arms. So we're going to reach our hands and cross the right arm over the left, over the upper chest, intertwine the arms, and motion them back over your face. So it's an arm twist and feeling where that sensation is in your right shoulder. Now let the feet comfortably rest together. Keep in mind, if you're searching for more stretch, it's not required, but you could make the blocks lower. You might find that supporting them is good too. Just hold space. Uncross and cross the left arm over right. Hook at the elbow zone, just around the elbows. And then intertwine and move the elbows towards the face. Feel where the waist is centering on its back. Try to feel from your back world. Feel the organs moving with the breath. Trying to move the elbows towards the back of the space. So keep them moving back over the face as far as they'll go. Uncross and let the arms center close to your mat. Feel the palms open, feel the shoulders pressing back. And select a few moments here where the obvious choice is that the shoulders press back and the knees press open. So those are two joint complexes that are, for most of us, we have a complex with them at some point in life, our shoulders or knees. So feel where they're supported right now, especially the shoulders. So I feel that pressing them back helps bring me some strength into my upper back and my chest muscles, opening that zone. Simply observing. Reorganize the spaces that you breathe into. And now we're going to push the feet towards one another, and so the inner thighs wake up. There's a little more muscle connection into the bones when they push the feet together. And then as you move the blocks aside, the hands need to be right there to help out. I want you to bring the knees to point up and roll a little bit over to either side to slide the blanket that's under your back away, okay? So the blanket or the set of them that you had under your spine goes away, but you keep the blanket that's under your head, okay? So when we're here and we press down, I want you to place your sand so it's either across your shins or around the back of your legs, around the hamstrings, depending on what will help you move your spine back and down to elongate the lower back. So if this flesh is too much stretch in your shins, right, putting the sand here pushes the knee joint, then move the sand to the back of your legs and consider this option. This is a very, well, most restoratives are floor-based practices, but this one quite a bit. So we want to stay real connected to the spine zone as if we're mentally focusing on how to elongate even the spaces that we feel that are fairly open right now, even the back muscles that aren't getting tighter, want to feel that a little more length. So feel where the knees move towards your chest. If you have the sand on the shins, it might feel a different sense of completeness around the back of the pelvis to stretch. So give it a few moments here. I want you to stay with just the sand supported back of the legs or across the shins, and the hands are going to be right beside your hips. So give a few moments and feel the perspective of your breathing in the lower belly, that when you in-breath, that you can actually feel that connection, that massage of those organs with your breathing channel. It's a new channel to tune into. You have your very own personal channel of breathing. Okay, now with that back length, we're going to take the sand aside and place a block. We're going to need two for this one. So reach for your bolster with your feet. I think having the bolster close-ish is a good idea. So you might hook onto the bolster with your heels, get it close enough that when you are kind of stomping down onto it with your feet, you can feel the very center nugget of your buttock, like you can feel that like a stone. So when you place the block between the knees, and if you have a grippy ball, you might prefer that between the knees. You choose. Okay. We're going to go right into the arm zone overhead. So when you push down into your feet, remember pressing downwards, and then feel the buttock kind of like two stones. And then as you lift up and the upper back pushes into the floor, my arms go overhead, okay? And I try to find that belt somewhere. And then as I lower my spine, I hold the belt a little wider than shoulder width apart and lower down my hips, okay? Alternate at a pretty fast pace here, comparative to what we've been doing with our pace. So with one breath per movement. It feels like we're starting to exercise at this moment. It gets you into your body and into its coordination. So as you inhale and you push down and lift up your hips, the belly already is comfortable and elongated right away. And as you exhale, lower spine. And play with the motions of the back for the next few times. Play with how lifted the hips will go comfortably. If your neck doesn't like the blanket, remove it. And then feel the length from your upper back now all the way down to the back of the pelvis. Okay, so what we're going to do is take our belt, and I want you to bring it around, slide it around the back of your thighs. But you got to find the part where the buckle is. Okay, so you're going to buckle up the legs, and you've got a fairly solid hold. So my block is still center, or my ball, whichever. You want to tighten it down so you can still, well, actually, it makes it kind of easy to squeeze that object, doesn't it? It's almost like it did it. Don't have to put a lot more energy into that. So this time when you lift up your hips into bridge pose, lift, 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 lift your hips. Bring your arms down by the sides, palms open, so the hands reach forward. Again, you can remove your blanket if you don't prefer it. Seems okay for me today, but every day is a little different with your connections to your cervical spine. You know, morning might be easier to have the blanket. So when we push down, I want you to try to move your hips up so you get higher on the shoulders. Much higher, okay? Now, with the hands reaching together, interlace your fingers a bit, as best as they'll go, and do the work with rolling the shoulders down and in towards the spine. Keep it simple, try it once on each side, don't overdo it. And as the buttocks get a little bit more tone, or you could say tense, you're pushing down to lift up, right? To open up it, you gotta lead by your tailbone. Lead by your tail. Okay. Now, as the hands separate, it's a lot of work to get there, to get the shoulders and the spine strong. We're going to lower down, and I want you to guide your spine like you're curling under, so the belly has to draw down, the tail scoops under, and then get that blocker ball, take it away, and then lift up your hips again and slide the block about mid-height, second setting under the sacrum. If that's too much lift, place the block low setting. And then bring your feet off the bolster and kick the feet up to the sky. Okay, tighten the belt down again so that you're sure to be put together this way. It won't fall apart, at least not so far, huh? Okay, so I'm going to move the belt so it seems like it affects my turnout in my feet. So I have it about, it's almost mid-thigh now, okay? And however you have that, let the legs just receive the extremities, reverse the flow back to the heart and the lungs, and feel your elbows open and the hands straight back into cactus. Reset anything that you feel is not quite balanced. Yeah, noticing just the sequence has been, it has a cumulative effect in the body, the sequencing today, but notice the balance of the lower back into the mid and upper between your shoulder blades, and that concentration into the throat, into the thyroid, the parathyroids. So you want to feel that your throat itself has a little bit of that squeeze, kind of juicing there. Swallow. Relax the breath. Notice the pressure in the lungs. And the challenge with your breathing muscles. So as you spread the breath through the core line, as you inhale, it goes against gravity in the diaphragm. Yeah, you've turned yourself upside down, so that diaphragm has to work to strengthen your core along with the diaphragm itself. And as you exhale, it goes with gravity for this one. It's a good dynamic to practice. We'll do this pose twice today for a little bit of time so that we can start our week with a good set of inversions. These are all mild inversions for the first half. Okay, now notice where the leg directionally pushes, if it feels like the legs are pushing together, without too much stress, right? We're not working in a kind of dynamic sequence where you have to keep pushing your feet up and then eventually, just like any body, right? The mind decides we're tired and it stops trying. So I want you to give a little fuel to the mind and the practice by reversing the flow of gravity, reviving in the abdominal organs, so increases that blood supply into the core, moves it from the feet, that's why they can get tingly. Blood pressure lowers in the feet. Now, when you're ready to unbuckle at any time, you could. Maybe you don't have it on, but you might notice the awareness of the leg muscles. You might let your eyes center and feel what the belt does collectively. And then when you remove that, you may have already trained your muscles to go that direction. So it may not change much, but I think after a while you get used to using the props and rely on them and let them help you. Okay, now we're going to a much bigger supported bridge now. So with the block that's high under my sacrum, when I move my legs forward on the bolster, it's a big opening in the hip flexors, right? So it's not a small pose for back bends, and it's a continuous stretch, right? It's not 1 second lift up and a back bend and then lower down, it's sustaining it. So rather than trying to squeeze the buttocks, you want to let the zone of the rear soften and try to feel the front of the hip bones releasing. So one thing you might focus to is if the block under your back is too harsh, you could put your feet on the bolster and you could move the block so it's a little lower. That might feel much better for your back. And you can also move the block itself lower, like turn the height of it down. So those are the two choices. No belt around the legs. You can definitely do this pose with the belt around the legs. If you could have adjusted that from up to down, it's just that you can't use one leg at a time to get down from the last pose if it's buckle up. Okay? So with a few more moments here, feel where the length is in the belly zone around to the sides and the gates of the ribs open. It's interesting how much work we do to release our back via opening our front, where we tend to collapse, especially the organs, trying to give them an opportunity. And now before shifting out, sampling, okay? Bring your knees to point up, door one, bring the feet together, knees out, Baddha Konasana, cobbler's pose, pose samples, okay? And another option would be to step your feet out wide on your bolster, knees together. That's kind of nice. But it's that channel of energy in the low back, so it's okay to have the arch in the back. We want our natural spinal curves, which we're not used to, and sometimes daily postural habits. So feel the curves in the low back, because that's where the lumbar curve is the essence of a happy spine. Now, you have to separate the knees to come up. So when you let them motion apart, push into your feet so the buttocks are like stones, right? So to develop the bones and the muscles, right? You have to use muscles to strengthen the bones and vice versa. So when I lift up, I'm going to slide the block away and then keep it rather simple here. So when I lower down, you could do two variations. You could have a grippy ball, massage. I would stay with just a buttock at a time. And since your hips were up for that duration, that's when you really can get that massage into the glute real nicely, right after it's already been lifted and stimulated and basically toned. Then you can kind of flush out those tissues, okay? It's kind of like you shake them out. If you are not privy to using this ball, if you have on one buttock, go to the other now. And if you're not up for the ball work, back all the way down, back down, and knees are gonna go side to side windshield wiper. But for all of us, we wanna end up doing windshield wiper. It's not really that easy to do with a ball, but it's possible. It's possible. Likely it's not gonna give you the same release. So use the ball for another 30 seconds or so if you're using that to massage the glute. So that would be, if you locate your buttock, it's going to be the center upper back, well, obviously the back, but the medius is upper back part of the buttock, right? Really at the eyelids of the buttocks. That's kind of where it is. So the knees are going to go side to side, eventually to windshield wiper, and let the feet be wide. Take a wide stance. Okay, any props on the right side, you're gonna kind of shift them. You're gonna need your sand. You will not need a block, okay? Unless you don't have a ball, you won't need your block. So windshield wiper to your hips' content, but get a feel here of your hips. Like when your knees go to the side, you almost try to push your hips over to that zone. Now center. Hug the back of the legs and draw the legs towards your chest. Feel the feet flop. Reserve a moment to feel the back touch down and try to widen that back space. It can always branch out the back ribs. Slide the hands to hold the legs, and then as you push your bolster to the right side yard of your mat, I want you to lower your right leg besides it, close to it. And as the left thigh crosses over to your bolster in a hip crossover, you may decide you want your extra blanket on top of the bolster, especially if your leg is kind of having a difficult time landing. You put something under it. You could also put your block under the leg. Okay? So if you have a ball, place it at your sacrum. If you have no ball, you can either use a corner of a block, and then we'll add our sand up across outer left leg. You could have it right on the hip. You could slide it out on the leg, on the ledge. Okay? Feel the balance of your leg muscles, right? The lateral rotators here. That connectivity into your pelvis. And then spreading out the left arm. So open this arm and feel where the zone of movement is best for you. Maybe it's a little bit back, besides your head. Maybe stretching it open is the best feature for your chest. Your chest, it's between your shoulder and your chest, I like that chest. Okay, right leg is either bending, like you're gonna slide your foot a little higher up towards your rear, or it's straightish. And immerse your moments here in the twist, the balance of the twist in your hip flexor on the right leg below. That's why bending the knee can be nice. And it doesn't have to be really fancy and a deep knee bend, but you might notice, how does your tail move in? How does it arch back? Breathing, feeling the rib cage expand, and feel the dynamic pulse of that reorganization in your core muscles. Yeah, and then parking your body in the shape. So I turn my head left. If I have additional sand, I could add more to the leg or maybe to the left arm. So let's rest our eyes for a few moments. Now notice the mid-back, right? It's a twisting part of your experience, is your mid-spine is the twister, okay? So I want you to keep encouraging that left knee as if it's trying to slide over. It's on the bolster, but it's reaching over to kind of get any of the kinks out of the connection between your hip and your spine, the connect the dots experience. And then if you're anticipating and trying, and you feel a little bit more tension at the hip flexor, the top of the left thigh, then truly let go. Let the body weight sink into the flooring and stay dedicated to the crossover with that left leg. Now the arms help get you ready for the next stage. So this is kind of like the phase 1 project here with the crossover is getting the props on you so that the hip can open on that outer leg. So I want you to keep it with length. So if you get a little tingly at the feet, that's interesting on this one, because that volume in the upper leg, we're trying to get that to feel the opening. If it's ending up at your feet, and then there's a little work to do up here where it's bigger. It's bigger, it's a bigger piece to the puzzle, isn't it? The left thigh, the buttock, the hip. Okay, so we're going to move the sand aside, okay, and get a belt. Now be caring to yourself on this one. I'm gonna encourage you to move the ball just so you have a little more freedom of sacrum. And then when I bring the left knee in towards my chest, I'm gonna grab the foot with my belt, get a hold of it, hold the belt with the right hand, go back to the crossover to the right side with my left leg, go back to the crossover, feel if you're able to go all the way through the back of the left leg, maybe getting into the hamstring a tad, and then bend your left knee. Right, we're trying to get out of this one very safely for our back. So when you tug on the foot belt, right, you're going to roll into the back. Nothing needs to go fast. And then when you take your hands both into grabbing the belt that's across the bottom of your left foot, slide your right foot in so it's close to your buttock, but really stretch the bottom of your left foot. Like maybe this is the biggest calf stretch today yet. If the leg is hyperextending and you know it, you don't have to focus so much on bending the knee, but maybe slide your hands down on the belt and get the back centered on the floor. Feel the foot flexing. Feel the leg maybe move a little forward. Give it a second here. Now right foot up into the belt, core work. So core from the spine. Hold on and then move your feet forwards. Now challenge yourself a little bit. So I've gone away from that straight up version to that's more of a piped position. Now when I bring my feet forward, instead of giving yourself degrees that you're going to move through, like 90 or 60 or 30 or whatever it'll be, I want you to challenge yourself, not kind of go halfway or all the way to the edge, but feel where it's a challenge, where it's pre-arch and you can't get out of your back arch, like where you kind of tighten up in the low back. So feel where your core might be responding, but your back is flat. And now I want you to let your elbows draw down closer to the floor so they're digging the floor a little bit. And then the legs go straight up. Okay, keep that looseness on the belt. Don't try to tighten it up again. Keep whatever was your range and then go back into it. So the elbows are down, my elbows are holding down to the floor, and the legs go straight up, okay? So take this a couple more times at your own leisure, because this is just definitely what you do in your leisure time. You can consider this leisure time. So when I push my feet up, my challenge is actually trying to push my feet up without having as much resistance on the belt. So instead of relying on the belt to do all the work, as you lean forward, your belt is tightly around the feet. But then when you go straight up, not so much. Your hip flexors have to fire. Okay, so what we're going to do is take the belt off and bring our hands besides our buttocks, or you can make fists, and then you put them underneath the sides of your buttocks, and you're kind of lifting up your rear from those fists. That's kind of interesting. I know the palms flat is a version people use too. It might feel easier in your hands, okay? So that's lifting up my pelvis. So my hands are right around the back of my pelvis, right? So my thumbs are close to touching, okay? Supports my core muscles or my corpuscles, okay? So legs can now really go straight up, right, when your hands are under. I'm not so sure I like that fist idea, but it's taught quite often. So I move my legs forwards, and I'm going to find my edge before I know my back is arching and not so happy, okay? Now I want you to bring your right knee in towards your chest and let the left leg lower down, and I want it to hover, so it's not on the floor. Oops, not on the floor. Keep it up, keep it up. Remember, bicycling the legs. And then switch sides, left knee and right leg forward, hover. Heel hovers. Okay, now slide the feet down to the floor and then lift up the buttocks a tiny bit to get your back completely down. Reach for your bolster, okay, on that side. And then as we take it over to the left, you might want to do a couple bolster push-ups. So put the bolster over chest, maybe overhead, and not over face, I mean, not overhead. But that is a technique we could do. But I want you to bend the elbows so that they're down by the sides, and then push straight up. And bend the elbows. Now, can you do this pattern with feet off the floor? Right, so you're not relying on your feet to push down, but you are trying to get your elbows by your sides. Last time. Okay. Now I'm going to move the bolster to the left side, and then with my legs lifted, let the left thigh stretch down, the right leg cross over, and motion so that you are finding what is your wave of movement for your back. So keep in mind, you could be distant from the bolster. You could decide, oh, I don't want to get too close to it. Okay, and then cross over so you have more space for the leg to stretch. Some people like to be right, tidy up next to it, next to their left thigh. But you'll be your you'll be who you are with it. So as I approach this, I get the ball first to the sacrum. I feel both of my shoulder blades on the floor. Try for that. And then take a hold of your sand. Place it to top of the exterior right leg first, and then work with that pattern of pushing it farther across. Let this be a reminder that twists from our back are very basic, right? Because the spine is straight before you rotate. When you're sitting, from your sitting bones planted, it's not like a true straight back, right? As much as it would be on your back itself. So this is a very safe way to do twists, right? You're not going to go wrong, but you got to center yourself and what feels responsible for you. So when you open out your right arm, you be the decider if you're going to add any sand, anything to it. I suppose this would be one where if you had like a massage ball, or one of those tune-up balls, or some people use tennis balls, you could also put that right for your right side near the trapezius, kind of a little bit more center off the shoulder in towards your spine. There's things you can do to massage into the upper back and shoulders. And then your head turns right. Arms are open to where it's comfortable. Be aware of what's occurring in your hip and your lower back. Stay with the plan. You don't have to make a plan, but stay with the essential cumulative effects of this practice. So feeling each of the phases that we're going through. We're just about ready to go up to the next one. Swallow to clear the passageway of your throat. Feel the ribs spreading. Gauge the balance of your shape by stretching the muscles between each rib. And it's more of a global motion, isn't it? It's not like you pluck a rib with each breath, right? You go one breath at a time. But it definitely has waves of motion in the body, and that's why slow, deep breathing can be useful. You can adjust your breathing. And it affects your nervous system quite a bit, intricately. Okay, now with the belly kind of puffing and moving, if it was held back from movement, give it that opportunity in balance with the poses, connecting. Move the ball away if you have one, move it away. Again, you could use block for that or stuff a towel, just so that the sacrum feels like it's supported and it's guiding the leg. Get a belt, and then as you slide your sand, now interestingly enough, we're going to be having all the weight bearing next shape coming up on this right hip. So I want you to feel when you bend that right knee and you kind of stay leaning to your left with your shoulder. You're leaning more left than you are back to the right. So when you grab your foot with your belt, make sure you've got enough for the left hand to easily hold, and then stretch the right leg back over to the left. Feel through the wave of the breath right? And the length of the leg. So it's like two different components of experiencing life, right? It's breathing and your structure. And then the breath affects how you center in your structure, right? If it's tense, if your structure's tense and creating more tension, breathing affects that. It's kind of like the first wave, right? Internally is the breath. Now, when I spend a few more seconds here with the foot, I'm going to push into the belt, feel that cross section of my back, especially the swath of my back from my ribs connected through my obliques, the side of the abdominal zone, and that's pretty tone here, okay? So since this practice seems to kind of layer on awareness of our structure, when you bend your right knee, this is exactly what you do in side sage, right? It's going to be the replication of this, but we have to flip ourselves over, okay? So that requires us to get up. So you're going to roll onto your back, take your leg up, take a moment here. I already got ahead of my pose here, but I'm going to flex my right foot with the help of my belt. Pull, balance your calf. I know it kind of has some sensations that sparkle around the back of your leg, huh? If you've got a pretty relaxed hamstring in general, this is an easy range, you likely feel your calf even more. Okay, so find the balance into your calves. Calf on. Calf light is on. Now, if the arms are kind of grippy, I got my elbows lifted, I'm going to slide my hands down. Yeah, and feel where my elbows are on the sides, comfortably resting down. Feel my left leg, right? If it's turning out, if I can get it to negotiate it moving up. And then slide that left foot in. Balance out the back of your pelvis. Push up into the right foot. Make all the muscles around that right leg awake. Okay, bend the right knee. We're just going to move the belt off the foot this time right away. And then we'll take our hands to the back of the legs, and I want you to roll up, and then we'll take our blanket from behind us and slide it in. You might want, I think one blanket will be adequate, but if you like to sit on two for the side sage, you can play a little bit with this variation. I'm going to do kind of a plain side sage. Not flying on a plane, but I have just the bolster lengthwise in front of my hip. So since this hip has been kind of pumped up a bit with movement recently, it probably feels pretty comfortable here to have the angle like you do in pigeon pose. So the left thigh stretches back. I take a ball, place it on the inner line of that left leg, feel where my left foot is comfortable. And then as I lean into my side, get your sand pack, move it up to the left side of your belly. And then when it kind of is taken across the back, if you get into this in your shoulder, but somewhere between your armpit and your shoulder is not so digging this, right? You could change your bolster horizontal across and add your blanket underneath your head, wad it up. So this is option one. Hand holds your left wrist, and you can move your sand any way you like. Okay, if this is not going well for your shoulder, switch it around fast, right? Change the bolster. Do any little movements you need to get your props around and wad up your blanket. Yeah. You want your head to feel like it lowers down, not like it's pulled up, okay? So you can get the neck to stretch. This might feel better for some of you, okay? So when that right knee parks up close to my bolster, oh, I've got a nice move of awareness into my right side of the waist. It's just holding it spatially. It's very easeful. And you might put a block under your left hand. Where is a block when you need it, huh? The left arm could go besides you. It could rest behind you. And then let the eyes feel like they kind of close sideways, don't they? But I don't think they actually do move that way. So feel the awareness through your sides. Now it's a little bit more clear, getting full body support. Okay. Let your head rest. If it's not nestled in, give it some time to nestle into the support. If you're going to change your props around to this organization, it's quite simple. The bolster turns horizontal. A blanket is wadded up under your head. Keep it simple. Yeah, oftentimes people comment that they don't feel such a deep stretch or what is this doing, and I find this to be quite effective at opening up the side spaces so simply without stressing the nervous system. It's a continuous opening without having to push and pull and pry. Give it a few more seconds. Okay, now feel where that left arm is going to support you. You're going to turn that left hand down. You're going to pivot your weight into your left hip, and I want you to actually move any object around your knee and turn so that you're facing to the bolster, and you'll move any of the props aside. So you're going to have your bolster so it's straight forward underneath you. I'm going to tuck my blanket so it's easy under the knees, and then we're going to move ourselves through cat-cow. We'll do a little fix here. Okay, so lift up your back muscles completely so you have your shoulders from your chest to your shoulders pressing, and round your back, chin to chest. Head down. Inhale, arch the spine. And exhale, round the back. Feel your hands wide, feel the back motion. Inhale, arch. Exhale, hollow through the belly. Now, next time you come back to the natural arch, I want you to push your bolster quite forward and actually bring your hips down towards the floor so you're lengthening through the front of the hips. Secure your hands wide on the floor so you're pressing down and elongating all the way up to the heart. Can you get a feel of your hands pressing down? And then as you come back through the spine, feel almost like you have a cape on your back, right? You're going to lift up and bring your knees out wide and stretch your hips towards your feet. Lower your head downwards. Now round your back, chin to chest, and lengthen through the front. Inhale. Exhale, come back towards your feet. You do not have to stop at your child's pose. Continue the pattern of movement. Fluidity through the spine and the waist. I suppose they're interconnected here. Give it a couple more moments. Reaching. Let your back get as much of that stretch as possible when you come back into down dog. So toes under, hands are wide, and try to feel where the handprints are pushing down through the roots of the fingers, and lift up the knees. Alternate bending your knees. So I guess this is a walking your dog's pose first. Feel that patterning of knees bending one at a time. And then with that stretch at the bottom of the foot, you're going to reach your hips back, your heels down, and the hands pressing the floor away. Let your head nod side to side. Now feel where your heels are lowering downwards. You're going to go opposite, so lifting up the heels. And those of you that feel comfortable staying on hands and knees, stretching your spine that way to child's pose, can lower down, hips back here, bring your bolster in, rest here for about 45 seconds. Those of us that want to come back to a standing forward bend, we'll walk our hands back towards our feet and hold the elbows and traction the spine via the weight of your head, okay? Let the head nod a little bit side to side. Now change the crossing of the arms. Feel the hold of the elbows, the release of the shoulders. Lower the arms and let's stride back forward from our forward bend or child's pose and tilt the knees so as they lower down. You're going to slide your bolster in and let's get our block. So we're going to take a wide stance, actually not wide for both feet, but for one foot. So we'll start with our right foot stepping to the top corner of your mat so the foot flesh is turned out, right? So it's turned out right foot. When I lower down the thigh to the ledge of the bolster, my obvious choice here is the arch of the spine, but see if you can let the leg muscles in the front connecting to the structure of the joint soften. It's like you're using the strength of your back to hold the position, right? If your back is feeling a little cranky with it, make sure those blocks are truly under your hands, under your shoulders, right? Closer in. Obviously they're under your hands, but they're structurally close enough under your shoulders or your shoulders. Then the top of that left thigh lengthens. Now, the higher the spine gets, the taller it gets. So we want to have that nice arch of our spine. I think you can arrive at this pose with the spine and its design of arching its curves and feel comfortable in your back. So try for that. If it's achy, then you're a little farther forward, aren't you? You're not so far up. Despite the fact that your leg is calling out for moving on. Now shift back and change sides. Right knee in, left foot out, simple. Guidance, thigh down, left foot turns out. Now where the top of that right thigh is sensing pressure, see if you can also sense the guided length in the front of your spine. And it's interesting because the front of your spine is lengthening in the discs, but the vertebral column is arching. So you want that balance, that scientific balance for the body composition, right, to become stronger, more solid. So finding your way towards these natural arches of the back and creating that lift from the crown of your head. Just try it. Try to keep the crown up versus pointing it forwards. Distractions happen. A few more moments. Now the right thigh is what we're going to stretch in our next side stage, right? So this back leg is going to continue that range in a few moments. So feel that connection. Now when you come back and center your knees and back them up. So you got to back up this pattern. So you're going to come down to the left hip. So lean into it. Right thigh stretches back. Now there's no ball at the sacrum on this one, right? There's only an option for a blocker ball on the inside of the right leg. So when you lengthen, you've got the bolster this way. I know there's many ways to go through these sequences. Arm over, sand on the right side. Or turn the bolster, right? So I can get back to my blanket under my head and rotate, okay? So continue this pattern of reach, elongation, range of motion. And feel where the waist lengthens from its side, right? We live in a body in a front world, right? We're oftentimes going forwards, not side or backwards. So feel from your side. And if you happen to have some props to keep helping you out, like a block or that sandbag, do not stop at just one option in your pose. Give it some selection so this opening of the ribs can be useful. You know, where you feel this range for your waist, this extended side beam, now, in the next few moments, we're going to start to turn the zone of the body with use of a wall. So we're going to do our hip, our twist work, our seated shape from a wall support background. So I find the wall can be quite helpful for especially for my twists and then for my inversion. So I want you to kind of just abide by noticing your torso lengthen here, knowing that you can do this quite well. In breath, ribs expand. Out breath, relax the belly. Okay? Now when you start to come out, give it some time for you to kind of flounder through. So we're going to move the sand aside if you have that. And when we come over to find the next space, you're going to roll into your left side and then come up, okay? So let's take our bolster to, your bolster, to a wall space, but I want you to basically have a blanket, and that'll be on the side, so you just kind of put it off to the side, and you'll want a sandbag. Okay, all the other props are kind of not the most important things to have quite yet, okay? Let's see where this will go. Okay, so what we're gonna do is sit far enough away from the wall. You don't have to have a whole lot of space next to the wall, but you do. I have it just perfect for my body, barely perfect in this room. But I want you to have enough space so that you take your legs forward. You're on just the bolster. You're far enough away from the wall that you'll have to try the first one out and see how it goes. But you're going to take the left leg, cross it over the right leg, so the left foot is on the floor solid. Right foot is flexing. And then hook the right elbow outside the left leg and put your left hand at the wall. So you want to be able to push into the wall, but also push away so you find that sweet spot between the two. Does that make sense? So I find that I definitely don't want to be too close to the wall. This would be really harsh on my shoulder. So I want to have more space is better, but you don't want to be so far away that you're stressed out to touch it. So I have a nice bend through the elbows, both of them. And then I can press with my right elbow. And I know this is intermediate advanced work, right? Seated twists are that way. So your best bet here is you do the best you can with the crossover. This is a basic leg pattern though, right? Our legs are not scooped up. They're easygoing, but feel the hand at the wall, like you're going to open out your fingers. You're going to try to turn the hand so the thumb points up and the right arm might be a little straight. If you can close your eyes, noticing that the importance of this work, especially in the spinal that we're in, twists and all, right? Working towards encouraging that structure for your shoulders, your chest, your chest, and then down into the rib complex that we started with, and then that belly gets kind of in a more of a contorted shape, massaging the belly organs. Yeah, and let's come out. So we're gonna bring that left foot and we'll take a simple cross-legged pose. So where you are, I'll turn so you can see a little more of this, but you're still facing your same direction back to the wall. Left leg crossed in front of right. So I'm not mirroring you, but your left leg crossed in front of your right. You're gonna lean forward, or you might put your hands on the bolster and tip a little bit forward. Keep it simple. If your hands come to the floor, if you happen to have a block nearby, you can put your hand on a block or two. Feeling that abundance into the hips. Since we're already in this version with the knees, hands on bolster, cross the right foot in front of the left, switch it. This could help our twist, our final twist. So when we come forward, if the inner thighs, if they're pretty boggy and they feel kind of choked up, right? You might have your hands onto the bolster so it kind of hooks around the back of the bolster. This can sometimes be helpful. Hook the hands on the back of the bolster. And then when you're leaning forwards, that support in the inner thighs. There's a lot of ways to come into these shapes. Now come upright, straighten the left leg under, the right leg crosses over the left, so the right foot is down. And I'm gonna turn to the wall, so my right hand to the wall, left elbow outside the right knee, and rotate. If your right foot is kind of spazzing out and not quite centered down, engage into your heel bone. Feel the upper left side of your back and rotate. Right thumb points up. Yeah, depends on what kind of wall support you have, right? You might be hands around the side of a wall. So now you look at all the places in your home for opportunities to do practice, huh? Feel the twist. Keep the spine up. Now feel the balancing zone of your lower belly. Lower the right hand, easy. And any of these you can take it easy, come out, come in. But when we come back to the wall, you're gonna uncross and then move your bolster, get your blanket, probably to where your feet are, bolster at the wall. And then as you prepare to get upside down, keep in mind you want your rear your sitting bones as close to the wall as you can to actually swing the legs upside down. So I find getting my back, my rear back to the wall. You can get into this from being on your back and scooting up to the wall with your legs already up at the wall, like if you're in bridge pose, some people are able to do that somehow. Have your sand nearby, and then when you start to get upwards with your legs, you're gonna move your shoulder under, and it depends on what side you roll up on, but keep in mind the swinging action has to do with what you just did, your twist from, right? You were just twisting. Same thing as you're doing here, isn't it? That you were doing at the wall. So you really want your seat close and then roll up. It's always some space, right? So I work to my best ability to get my legs lifted, but then let them ease and center, okay? Feel how the thigh muscles balance out measurably in the beginning. It's the back that takes the time. So using the sand across the bottoms of the feet can start to settle each portion of the leg all the way down into the organs. Okay, and that's kind of the basin here that you're supporting. So be ultra careful to balance the sand on your feet and your feet touching to the wall at the heels. Like you're trying to spread out the heels themselves at the wall. You might have to reset your sand until you feel confident with it. And then the arms go back. See if you can let the arms extend if you prefer them out to your sides. Blanket where you want that. Maybe it's just under the center of the back of your brain. And perhaps you've gone without the blanket. Okay. Eye shutters close from top to bottom. Belly lifts with the inhale. And experiencing that it's not a stiffening breath with your inhale, but it's softening. So calming through the belly. Feel the motion of your ribs and feel a softening in the core of the belly. Return the weight of the hips down and gather your attention on the even rhythm of your breath. Now, if your feet are feeling comfortable, not too tingly, if you can maintain that balance of the flexing of the feet without much change or redirection, but redirect the flow of the diaphragm. So when you in-breath, again, it goes against gravity, but even more so at the wall, as it's very defined, right? It's turned upside down. And then when you exhale, the connection of emptying the lungs, right, is much more obvious in the transfer of energy into the upper lungs. So in breath, fill the lower, out breath, exhaling out of the mouth. It's all upper, goes all the way up to the thyroid, the throat. Rest your face. Now balance the tailbone, lead from your tail. Feel the back of the pelvis or the tailbone press into the bolster. Opens up the back of the knees nicely. And then start to travel the heels down. If you're not already without your sand, you're going to let that move back. And the knees are bending and clutching the legs either around the knees or below at the back of your thighs. Roll to one side and take a moment, pause, since your blood pressure is quite low from that, before you jolt yourself up to sitting, and take a simple cross-legged position for a second or two to connect ourselves with our breath, because we are all interconnected, taking our practice together. So feel your seat, kind of imagine the connection outwards as your hands rest on the lap, and feel where the shoulder bones motion back. Feel where the shoulder bones, from the chest to the shoulders. Lift up your shoulders, squeeze. Exhale them down for 2. Inhale once more. Exhale, let it go. Lift your hands up to balance at the heart center and let your brain lower down to your heart center. Inhale. And with exhale together to the space behind your heart. Namaste. Okay.